Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Peace be always with you. Welcome to Global Light Path. I am Irshad Mahmood from Toronto, Canada. The topic is marriages, marital relations, etc. Marriages are strictly prohibited to close relatives, for example, mothers, sisters, aunts, etc. Chapter 4, verse 22 to 24. The Quran covers all matters of life with solutions to problems like sex. Chapter 4, verse 23 to 24. Emission of semens, verse 56. Chapter 6, 86, verse 5 to 7. Pregnancy and childbirth. Chapter 3, verse 5 to 6. Chapter 23, verse 12 to 14. Chapter 35, verse 11. Suckling the baby. Chapter 2, verse 233. Chapter 31, verse 14. Chapter 46, verse 15. Family duties. Chapter 4, verse 35. Chapter 13, verse 21. Chapter 47, verse 22 to 24. Meditation. Chapter 4, verse 35. Chapter 13, verse 21. Chapter 47, verse 22 to 24. Divorce, separation issues. Not instant 3 times pronouncing, which is against the Quran. Chapter 2, verse 22 to 6 to 241. Chapter 4, verse 35. Chapter and verse 128 to 130. Chapter 33, verse 49. Chapter 65, verse 1 to 7. Chapter 58, verse 2 to 4. Divorce without touching woman. Chapter 2, verse 236 to 237. Iddah period, waiting period. Chapter 2, verse 2 to 8. 234, 235, 240. Chapter 33, verse 49. Chapter 65, verse 1 to 7. Remarriage after halala, read Surah At-Talaq and Surah Al-Nisa, complete Surah. Surah Al-Nisa, chapter 4, verse 3 to 6, verse 22 to 27, 23, verse 128. Surah Al-Baqarah, Surah Al-Hizab, and Surah Al-Ma'idah. Read. Inheritance issues, chapter 4, verse 3 to 33. Chapter and the verse 176 as well. Care of parents, chapter 2, verse 33, 1 and verse 180. Chapter 4, verse 36. Chapter 6, 151. Chapter 17, verse 23 to 25. Chapter 29, verse 8. Chapter 31, verse 14 to 15. Chapter 46, verse 15 to 19. Doing good deeds and serving humanity. Chapter 25, verse 70. Chapter 5, verse 32. Chapter 6, verse 160. Love to relatives. Chapter 2, verse 83. Verse 177. Verse 180. Verse 215. Chapter 4, verse 1. And 8, verse 8. Verse 36, verse 135. Chapter 6, verse 151 through 152. Chapter 8, verse 41 and 75. Chapter 16, verse 90. Chapter 17, verse 26. Chapter 24, verse 22 and 61. Chapter 30, verse 38, etc. One must avoid shirk. Chapter 2, verse 35. Chapter 9, verse 31. Chapter 25, verse 43 to 44. Chapter 32, verse 52. Chapter 35, verse 14. Chapter 40, verse 16. Bidda, innovation in Deen. Chapter 57, verse 27. Falsehoods. Chapter 2, verse 42. Chapter 62, verse 5. Chapter 83, verse 1. False promises. Chapter 2, verse 93. Chapter 60, verse 12. False oaths. Chapter 2, verse 93. Chapter 60, verse 12. Disobeying any of Allah's commandments are sins and evils. Zina, adultery. Chapter 24, verse 2. Sodomy, homosexuality. Chapter 7, verse 80 to 84. Chapter 24, verse 2. Chapter 26, verse 165 to verse 166. Excesses in sex. Chapter 4, verse 15 to 25. Chapter 6, verse 151. Chapter 17, verse 23 to 32. Chapter 23, verse 5 to 7. Chapter 24, verse 1 to 5. Chapter 26, verse 30. Chapter 24, 1 to 5, verse 26, verse 33. Chapter 25, verse 68 to 70. Chapter 20, verse 29 to 31. Sex during menses of women. Chapter 2, verse 2 to 2. Seduction. Chapter 4, verse 15 to 25. Chapter 6, verse 151. Chapter 17, verse 23 to 32. Chapter 23, verse 5 to 7. Chapter 24, verse 1 to 5. Chapter 26, verse 30. And also verse chapter 24, verse 1 to 5. Verse 26, verse 33. Chapter 25, verse 68 to 70. Chapter 70, verse 29 to 31. Peers, faqirs, and all those peers. Chapter 9, verse 31. Faqirs. Chapter 9, verse 31. Babas. Chapter 9, verse 31. Sajda to Jada Nashin, Sajda Nashin. Chapter 9, verse 31. And their tavis, gandes. Chapter 2, verse 102. Chapter 10, verse 76 to 77. Chapter 20, verse 59. Taviz gande more. Chapter 2, verse 102. Chapter 10, verse 76 to 77. Chapter 20, verse 69. Jatu, magic, seher. Chapter 2, verse 102. Chapter 10, verse 76 to 77. Chapter 20, verse 69. Jadu, that's another thing is Dhona. Again, chapter 2, verse 102. Chapter 10, verse 76 to 77. Chapter 20, verse 69. And a special dua business. Chapter 9, verse 31. Mazar, graves, worships, and dead sands. Chapter 30, verse 52. Chapter 40, verse 60. Stop all un-Islamic customs and practices, etc. And read the Quran, miracles, with understanding, translation, follow it in spirit, and invite others to do so. Non-practicing Muslims are like as donkey carrying food. Reference Al-Quran, chapter 62, verse 5. None argue concerning the revelation of ayat of Allah, but those who disbelieve. Reference Al-Quran, chapter 40, verse 4. Above are the just list is like an index. So you have to do which one is allowed, which one is not allowed. There are lots of commands in the Quran. Just go and read translation, read with understanding, ponder on it. Thank you.